Hello and welcome to Dialogue. Chinese President Xi Jinping is attending the second China Central Asia Summit in Astana, Kazakhstan from June 16th to the 18th. The summit is an opportunity for China and the 5 Central Asian countries to deepen strategic trust, enhance practical cooperation, and jointly contribute to stability and positive momentum to a world fraught with uncertainty. So what are the common concerns and challenges for countries in Central Asia? What outcomes might we expect to see this year? And how does the mechanism provide a positive framework for regional governance? Join us for discussion today, live from Beijing. I'm Xu Qinduo. Joining me today are Rong Ying, Chair Professor of Sichuan University, Yersultan Zhanseitov, Senior Expert of the Institute of World Economics and Politics in Kazakhstan, Anton Fedyashin, Associate Professor of American University, and Assel Tutumlu, Associate Professor in Political Science at Near East University. Welcome to Dialogue. Well, Rong Ying, I will start with you. So this is the second China Central Asia Summit to be held in Astana. Tell us, what to expect from the perspective of the Chinese.
Well, certainly, I think this is from the Chinese perspective, China's diplomacy. It is once again major diplomatic sort of event by head of a state diplomacy. That's what we said, and also I think it is once again a kind of a showcase of China's good neighborly diplomacy. And last but not least, I think in the wake of the Central Conference of China's neighborhood work, which was held in early April this year, I think a lot of new ideas, new initiatives will be tested and implemented through this highest level, summit level engagement with China's in 5 most important neighbors in terms of sort of summit diplomacy.
Assel, so what is the expectation, do you think, is in Astana and, of course, in the 5 capitals of the regional, let's say, Central Asia, 5 Asian countries here?
Well, I think there are several areas that are very much common to all the countries. That includes, obviously, international trade. It includes logistics. It includes also the common projects regarding the green economy and energy and the security concerns as well that bring the countries together into one union simply because these challenges cannot be addressed bilaterally. So having this specific format enables all the actors come together and really enhance their both economic and security benefits.
Anton, of course, previously we know there were basically regular meetings of foreign ministers for China, plus this regional 5. And then it was elevated to this summit meeting between leaders in 2023. And this year marks the second summit of these countries. So from your perspective, what brought China and the 5 Asian countries together? What are their common interests and concerns?
Well, their common interests are to stabilize the region where they live. I'm an historian, so I look at things sort of through their deeper roots. And if there's one real turning point to this story, of which this is simply a continuation, it is Zbigniew Brzezinski's famous book from 1997 called The Grand Chessboard, a name which referred to Eurasia. And back then, Brzezinski, who is he's of course dead now, but who was one of the most creative and influential American geopolitical thinkers, in that book, which I encourage everyone who's watching this to read, even if you don't agree with a lot of points in it, Brzezinski argued that the post-Cold War American strategy should be to basically manipulate all of the players in Eurasia to prevent any one or a compendium of any of them from emerging to challenge American influence on the continent. Now, to people who live in Eurasia, Eurasia is not a chessboard, it's their home. And so what we're seeing is, in the long span of history, the de-Westernization of Eurasian geopolitics, but also a fairly structured, rational reaction to Western involvement in Eurasia. The Chinese are working with Central Asia, with the Russians, with South Asia, to create regional frameworks for economic, security, tourism, every form of human activity, regional networks of cooperation that are invulnerable to Western involvement or meddling, or even the weaponization of Western financial institutions or trade flows, something that we've seen a lot of around the Ukraine crisis lately.
Yersultan, to the opposite, of course, of the suggestion by Brzezinski, we can see that actually China and the five Central Asian countries have established a strong relationship. They are this strategic, comprehensive strategic partnership between China and basically every regional five, and also they have established this what we call like a community of shared future between China and the Central Asian countries. And of course, they are BRI partners in terms of infrastructure, in terms of basically every aspect of economic activity there. So what do you make of this relationship, the current status quo, and probably what we are looking forward to?
Actually, China is a superpower. Of course, it was kind of strange until this moment that China is not active as much in Central Asia as it is now. So I think things are being changed now, and Central Asia is also benefiting strongly through the connection with China. Well, China is a superpower. It's like first, second place in the world in this size of economy. China is a source of technology, innovation. So it's natural for the region to be more strongly connected to China. Well, Central Asia doesn't have the exit to the ocean. So China is also helping us to solve this problem too, especially Kazakhstan through our port in Danyungan. What to expect? This is the second meeting in this format, C5+1. I think the fact that it's been held here in Astana, it means a lot for Kazakhstan. It means that Beijing sees Astana as its key partner here in Central Asia. And I think by the result of the summit, the Astana declaration will be signed, and it's going to be like one of the cornerstones of the future cooperation here in Central Asia. Of course, as it was mentioned, the cooperation includes all sectors of the economy. So I think it will benefit even more for all the Central Asian states. It will benefit for transport, logistics, energy sector, digitalizations, new technology. So we'll see what will be announced in the summit tomorrow.
Mm-hmm. Well, Assel, if you look at the statistics from the customs office, China's trade with the regional five, of course, has expanded from 312 billion yuan in 2013 to 674 billion yuan in 2024, in about 10 years' time. That represents an increase of 116%, with an average annual growth rate of 7.3%. That's very impressive, to say the least. And in the first 5 months of this year, we see the trade between China and the five Central Asian countries reached 286 billion yuan, up more than 10% year on year. That's a new record for the same period. So share with us, what do you see are the driving factors behind this strong growth in trade?
Well, I think the growth in trade is the geopolitical situation basically calls for different new solutions. So particularly, China has been historically creating the Belt and Road Initiative, creating the foundations for infrastructure in order to basically link the region, China, the Central Asia, Caucasus, and Europe. And these links have been actually established initially through the big infrastructure projects such as the gas pipelines, the oil pipelines, the various ports, the border crossings, and so on. And now I think there is a real opportunity and a chance to modernize this existing infrastructure to the point that it becomes a real alternative to the, so to say, northern corridor, which was so commonly used before Russia's war in Ukraine, which now becomes very difficult to operate. And as a result of that, I think China becomes a really key and essential partner in establishing this type of logistical hubs and movements of goods, services, and trade between Asia and Europe. And obviously, Central Asian countries are benefiting from it. So we have, for example, the increase not only in the volume of goods themselves, but also in the type of goods that are now crossing and the amount of time that has been significantly decreased with the new introduction of new, for example, terminals, the railways, and the cooperation, the C+5 cooperation really enables to treat the region as a kind of a unified logistical space for everyone to benefit from the cooperative and common agreements. So that's basically what is responsible for it.
We'll stick on that theme of transportation and infrastructure, Will, and let me see. Yersultan, if you take a look at, again, the numbers, freight trains from China to Europe via Kazakhstan have become commonplace these days. In 2024, 32 million metric tons of cargo were transported along this road, a record high again. At the same time, container transit to Europe increased by 43%, and the volume of transit traffic reached 15.3 million tons, which is 19% more than the year earlier, that's in 2023. And the expectation is that by the end of 2025, this year, China and Kazakhstan will increase the volume of cargo transportation to 35 million tons. So how realistic is that goal? And can we say further development of a seamless and a safe transport system will be one of the key topics probably to be discussed by leaders at this summit?
Of course, transport and logistics will be, I think, the most important topic, since we know in the year 2023, Kazakhstan terminal was opened in Xi'an. So transport and logistics is the key subject today in our cooperation, one of the key subjects. And Kazakhstan is a key country in Belt and Road Initiative. It's not a coincidence that Mr. Xi Jinping visited Astana in the year 2013 to announce this strategy, this initiative. So if we are talking about the corridors, like even if the most of the goods are still being transported through Russia, by the year 2023, the numbers show that around 80% of that cargo is still going through Kazakhstan, even if it goes further through Russia, but it first goes through Kazakhstan. And if you are talking about now middle corridor, so Kazakhstan is a key player in both cases. Middle corridor has many different roles. It also operates as a strategic plan B for China as well. If the situation in Ukraine gets worse, China still has an alternative road through Central Asia, through the Caspian Sea, through Caucasus. And for Kazakhstan, of course, it has strategic value. Will not be depending on our northern border, northern country that much. But talking about the priorities in this logistics, in my point of view, the middle corridor should be more specialized on transporting crucial goods like rare earth metals, like uranium, and this kind of goods. Since it will take some time to expand the capacity, So it's better to use this volume and capacity to export like more valuable goods that requires more safety, for example, for our European partners. So I think that there are niches and roles for both corridors, for the northern corridor and for the middle corridor as well.
We'll speak of the economic corridors. Anton, of course, we are talking basically connectivity here, and speak of the significance of that. Of course, what occurs to mind is China, Kyrgyzstan, and Uzbekistan railway to regional development. It's expected to shorten distance by 900 kilometers, and the time by 3 to 5 days to be decreased. And also, of course, people are talking about, Ukraine war. There is, you have to somehow divert your road to European countries through Central Asia. But the war will end, at some point, and sanctions will be gone at some point. And that will be inclusive, not only Central Asia, and then up to Russia, Russia, and of course the Ukraine, etc. So the future, I would say, the potential is tremendous, I would say, in terms of the connectivity of this entire region. Is that the situation?
It is. It is tremendous. And the remarkable thing about this story, again, looking at it strategically, is that China is very intelligently filling in the spaces that had been so profoundly underdeveloped. And that's not just the West's legacy, although in part it is. It's also the Soviet legacy. The Soviet economy was quite shielded within the Soviet Union from the outside world. So, for example, there were very few connections between China, especially once the Sino-Soviet relationship started disintegrating in the late 1950s and then throughout the 60s and 70s. And so the Chinese are now reconnecting the entire central part of Eurasia to their economy, to Europe also, and to the rest of the planet. And only good can come from this as long as all of the countries look at this as a win-win situation, which it certainly looks like they are. And the interesting contrast to this is the way that the United States is approaching international trade, not just logistically, but more strategically and conceptually. Because with the coming of Donald Trump to power, with the trade wars that he launched against the whole world as tools of renegotiating America's trade relationships, the Trump administration has really become the biggest encourager of regionalization and of a globalization that is emerging parallel to what was until now, and for about 3 centuries, a completely Western-dominated, and by the way, physically Western-created system of shipping goods, both overland and overseas. So we're all living through a tectonic shift in geoeconomics. And one of the ironies of what's going on is that Lindsey Graham and people like him have emerged as the biggest gifts to multipolarity and multilateralism, both economic and geopolitical, that you could possibly dream up. And the Chinese and the Russians and the Indians, the Brazilians, the BRICS plus countries, and I'm sure we'll hear some of this in Astana over the next few days, they are taking advantage of this.
We'll speak of this multipolarization. Rong Ying, according to the Eurasian Development Bank, by the end of 2024, Central Asia accounted for 47% of all Chinese investment in the Eurasian region. So the regional five, C5, represents immense opportunities for the Chinese investors, but also we can equally say China values this region as much as the 5 regional countries value the Chinese investment here.
Yeah, that's exactly, I think, what the significance of that cooperation mechanism sort of carries for both China and Central Asian states. And we know that under that framework, under that vision of building a community with shared future, I think the two sides, if I can say, or the community as a whole, understand very well their future, which I think shared future would be only guaranteed and sort of developed by working together. Based on win-win cooperation, mutual respect, these principles are very much important. But most importantly, I think the areas or projects that would manifest or showcase these visions and principles. And that is exactly the reason why, with that framework, and the priority areas would have to be sort of identified. I think 2 years ago, in Xi'an, the leaders reached a strategic consensus that this vision should be implemented. And this meeting, this summit, I would assume that they are now with the support of these institutions or high-level sort of cooperation mechanism, most of them at the ministerial levels for functional cooperation and others. And they would identify and priority areas for cooperation. And one of the priority areas I would feel, or at this moment, is which fits the sort of needs, is industrial cooperation or capacity cooperation. That is, I think, should be an important area for that. And for that, these corporations they have quite solid foundations. The connectivities projects now has been there. And apart from, of course, the political trust and the sort of understanding that these projects are going to help. And last but not least, of course, we're going to talk about later the people-to-people interactions and others. So all in all, we are looking at a kind of not only a kind of sort of projects, visionary projects of showcase the China and the Central Asian states are going to do something different from what we have talked about, which is rather than a kind of competing for influence in this part of this world. China and ASEAN are committed to work together to pursue their common development, common prosperity through cooperation. That would be a kind of a demonstration. Would have demonstration effect for providing a different sort of way of doing business.
Yeah, it's like
established relationship.
Different model of relationship. I believe you talked about this manufacturing capacity building. Of course, like BYD factories in regional countries, or solar farms, with investment from China, technology from China, it produce electricity. For example, in Kazakhstan, like 7% of the total, more than that, generation. That's impressive. And as you said, people-to-people exchange. That's probably more the foundation, laying long-term foundation for both sides to develop, to continue to develop. I would have Yersultan, because of, I guess, partly due to this simplification of a visa application, we are seeing more people are visiting countries beyond their borders, in the neighborhood. So the flow of tourists from China to Kazakhstan, for example, in 2024 increased by 78% compared to the year earlier in 2023. So can we say we are unlocking this, different probably economic tourism potential of Central Asian countries here?
Sure. As we know, the Chinese tourists are the most expensive tourists. That other countries are competing for each other. In that case, Kazakhstan and hopefully other Central Asian countries are lucky. So we are attracting more and more Chinese tourists. And but I'd like to say that the potential is not yet been used up. We still have many other ways to develop the tourism for the Chinese tourists. For instance, There are many beautiful land sites here in Kazakhstan, different types of tourism that are still underdeveloped. So I think the potential is still huge. And there is a lot of fields where Kazakhstan and China can work together to develop this kind of tourism. At the same time, we also see that China is becoming more and more attractive for Kazakhstani tourists, not only business people. That's a normal thing, like historically when people from Kazakhstan go to China for business, but for sightseeing as well. So we could say that we're discovering each other like closely, much more closely than it was before. So it works like win-win for both of us.
Yeah, well said. Assel, I think that's a good point. It's like we are rediscovering or we are discovering each other via the practice of visiting each other. For a lot of Chinese people, of course, that's really something new to visit the neighboring countries. It's been there for a long time, but probably it's the first time for them. It's eye opener. That's something for them really impressive. At the same time, we do see the educational sector. You see more young people. For example, in 2023, about 30,000 young people from the from this region studied at Chinese universities, and there are 13 Confucius Institutes in the Central Asian countries. In turn, Central Asian language departments have been opened in Chinese universities. We are seeing this, basically China is showing strong interest in C5, and C5 countries are also, send their young kids to China to learn. Are we seeing this momentum being formed in terms of, learning more about each other and learning from each other even?
Yeah, absolutely. And
yeah, Assel,
yeah, I also agree with the. Yeah, I also agree with the kind of a historical overview, right? That during the Soviet times, we were completely isolated from each other. And now it's the time to actually really pick up this space and get to know each other, particularly because there are a lot of fears and insecurities regarding the Chinese expansion and potential Chinese control, land grab, and so on. We've seen the protests in 2016, for example, in Kazakhstan, against that had a very kind of strong anti-Chinese rhetoric in it. And so this particular cooperation, the visa-free regime, the academic and also the health tourism that is important for Central Asian, just regular Central Asian population is actually picking up and growing. On top of that, we also, besides the Confucius Institutes, for example, there are Luhan workshops that are particularly present, for example, in countries like Tajikistan, that would train people with technical skills. And that's where cooperation starts. And we are experiencing the rise, so to say, of both the interests. And you can see in the academic programs, particularly in international relations, in institutes of diplomacy, China is becoming the key language that is offered and sometimes even kind of fostered for students to learn. And that's again a great sign to learn about each other and potentially have kind of a very, not just the high-end diplomacy, but people-to-people cooperation and knowledge.
Exactly, and people-to-people exchange and face-to-face, speaking to each other and the people, bring the people together. That's probably the best way to dispel this misunderstanding. And of course, sometimes, increase the mutual understanding. It's a cliche, but it's critically important. Well, on that note, we come to the end of today's show. Many thanks to our guests. You can also watch us on the CGTN app on YouTube. Thank you for being with us. I'm Qi Qinduo. See you next time.